Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Blue Screen Brothers, trying to find new ways and new people to enlighten us all. And this time around, we've been kind of digging deep down into Microsoft Redmond, and we found Rohan Brooker, who's going to talk to us about Surface for Business. Hey, Rohan.
Hey, Alexander.
Hey. So, just for our viewers and listeners, who are you, and how did you end up in Redmond?
Yes, certainly not originally from here. So hail from down under, as they like to say, from Australia. And I've worked in Surface for a very long time. I had a role in Surface based out of Sydney and recently moved over to the United States to continue, but in our engineering teams. So more specifically, I work in the Surface commercial team, and I lead a team called the Commercial Software Experiences team. That team is laser focused on how we can make the lives of IT better, save them time, squeeze maximum value out of their Surface devices.
So we have a starter slide here that says the Surface for Business, and we talk about commercial education, and we see some new tools. And one of the things that maybe have been talked less about the last couple of years is repairability and warranty experience. So is that a big thing since it's the first slide?
It absolutely is. And in fact, if I was, with the reason I guess we use this slide is to kind of tell the full story of value. So just to give you a look behind when we think about, okay, it's time to build the next Surface device. Obviously, the hardware experience is paramount. We obviously, pride ourselves in our craftsmanship and what we do for the hardware. But when we look at commercial and certainly the kind of the decision making that happens with our commercial customers, the value that's important isn't solely on the hardware. It doesn't start and end there. It spans a multitude of other things. And that's kind of really where those other three pillars are. So we obviously build very commercially specific devices to kind of tailor to unique scenarios and needs of our customers. But then we also go, okay, that's the device that we want to go and build, but how do we make that show up as the best of Microsoft and the best of Windows? And then kind of going along from there, we also go, okay, so what is the experience for our IT admins? Do we have good deployment, good management, good ability to track health and provide support? And that's really where our kind of portals and tools story comes in. And then, of course, as you mentioned, from a repair and warranty standpoint, we really want to make sure that we're showing up with a great repair and warranty experience for our devices, which you've seen over time. Our devices get more and more repairable as sustainability certainly becomes top of mind, even more so these days with many of our customers. So they're kind of the different pillars that we think through when we go and decide that, yeah, let's go and make a new Surface device for commercial customers.
If I'm not mistaken, a little bit told me that you're quite deep into the new Surface for IT Toolkit and their applications there.
Indeed, indeed. So that's certainly the area of my passion and what a team does is we really enable that for the IT pros. So we've got a brand new Surface IT Toolkit. We've also got a Surface Management Portal. But yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit about the toolkit.
Yeah, where should we begin?
Yeah, let's actually take a little bit of a lower level look first, and then we'll get into the specifics of the actual tool. And I want to kind of just level set on just some fundamentals around UEFI. For those of you, I guess the folks watching who aren't aware, Microsoft or Surface specifically, we build our own UEFI, which is not overly common practice in the industry. A lot of the times there's kind of UEFI providers that, that they will sell their product and then manufacturers will put that on their device. For us, though, we certainly saw the value in being able to build our own UEFI, and that's under something that's called Project Mu, which has been open sourced as well for the industry to use. But what that allows us or affords us the ability to do is a couple of different things. Number one, from a security standpoint, what it means is that we know all the code that is running on the device. So we essentially can run a very slim and skinny UEFI. So we have really reduced the attack surface of UEFI. And this is the part of a device that obviously starts and happens all before Windows. And it's kind of the most privileged part of the device as well. So you can make huge fundamental changes. So making sure that it's secure is certainly paramount. And then the other thing that it's afforded us to do is be able to provide very granular management with some of our tools that we use. So it is a bit of a dense topic, but I do want to up level a bit and go, okay, that all sounds wonderful, but what does it really mean for kind of end customers? So there's a lot of value in being able to, I guess, have an approach or a strategy as a customer to look at UFI management. So how do I manage these settings? Number one is certainly the most secure way to kind of control the hardware. So if say the customer has a requirement that they know there's no Wi-Fi allowed in our environment, you can disable that obviously using policy in Windows. But the reality is that the Wi-Fi card is still there. But it's just disabled and you can't do anything with it as a user. If we actually do that within the UEFI, what we're essentially doing is we're cutting the power on the bus, and it means that that actual component never gets power. So the operating system boots up and it just goes, oh, this is a device that doesn't have a Wi-Fi card in it. So arguably the most secure way to kind of do that. And in addition to that, that's obviously for a very specific set of customers. But generally speaking, as I mentioned before, controlling the UEFI is important because it's the most authoritative part of the device. So we've seen countless education customers where students get bored in their classrooms and they like to poke around and they get into the UEFI and they turn things off and put passwords and forget and puts a device in a state that can be unusable. And really the only path that they've got to kind of recover that device is to send it back to Microsoft. So
I thought that was a
yeah,
Norwegian problem. Is that really a worldwide
I
problem?
think that might be global because the kids
That might
down
be
under
global.
do that too. So
All right, all right, all right. No, because you're talking about really important stuff. One is that if I lose, let's say I go through security check at airports or wherever I travel, I kind of put my device on the security tray. I forget it. I go to my airplane and I say, hey, where's my laptop? And then I got to get off the plane and everything. And while I've been gone, people could have turned it off, booted it, and accessed the UFI. But uh, traditionally, you need to type in admin password on each device. So you need to have physical access to the device to type in a password. But this way, there's been a new way so that you could kind of manage that.
yeah, that's right, and we can certainly. I'll get into that, but this is going to afford the
Hmm.
opportunity to be able to protect that, which is honestly, it's not always something that's top of mind for customers. Everybody obviously thinks about their Windows password that they use and their credentials there, but UFI is not always thought about from that perspective. So certainly important.
You mentioned Wi-Fi. Is there any option to disable camera, USB, or other components on the device as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess that was just a one of many
Hmm.
examples. We can certainly get to the kind of that component level control, but there's also some of the more advanced security options too that can change things like the boot order. So another example is we don't want either people who have stolen a device or we don't want end users to be able to do an alternative boot, stick a USB stick in the side, boot it up to an alternative operating system, and kind of reclaim the device that way. So we can also control those types of things that are not necessarily hardware related, but certainly kind of security related as well.
So moving forward, how do we utilize the fact that you made your own UFI?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a little bit of a talk about the options that we have today. So what we'll dive into today is something that's called Surface Enterprise Manager Mode. This is really good for customers that are in kind of a hybrid or an on-premise environment. Um, and the reason that I say that is because the way that we've implemented UFI management in both of these scenarios, in fact, is certainly very sophisticated compared to what has been done in the past. So, for some context, what is a lot of the time is done is that an IT admin, should they want to go and do UFI management, they will, they might make a script and they might configure the settings, and then that's all locked down and controlled by a password. Um, and I don't think I need to tell you and probably many of the listeners that, we all know how secure a password is. So what we use instead is that we actually use certificates. So meaning that, hey, I make my package on my configuration and I put that on the device, but then I secure that with the organizational certificate. meaning that ultimately the only way to go and change or remove that configuration is to go and present that same certificate. So there's no, sharing of passwords between admins. There's no, I guess, disgruntled admins that might leave the organization and have access to the passwords. There's no forgetting the passwords or losing sticky notes. So certainly a far more secure implementation. And that's what we do in Surface Enterprise Management Mode in the toolkit. But we do also have another option available for UEFI management as well, which is called a DFCI, or Device Firmware Configuration Interface. The name maybe has a little bit more to be desired in that space, but it is a pretty cool tool. And that's one of the benefits of certainly the open source side of our UEFI, in that this is very much agnostic. So any device vendor, not just Surface, who implements Project Mu in that open source UEFI will essentially be able to do UEFI management from Intune, which is pretty powerful, and certainly a lot more modern, which is really the customer base that it appeals to. Essentially, you just need to have a user anywhere around the world. As long as they've got an internet connection, they can use DFCI and they can push policies and configure and lock down the UEFI that way. So that's kind of the two different options that we have, but I'm happy to talk a little bit more about where you can find Surface Enterprise Management Mode. Next.
Yeah, that would be great. You mentioned doing this worldwide, and this might be I might be jumping ahead of time here, but configuring this via Intune, does that require a reboot of the device?
Yes, that it will require a reboot of the device. Ultimately, we need to be able to apply those settings, those packages, and then ingest that within the UEFI itself. So it is push the policy, receive the policy, and then reboot the device on top of that.
So it's general how we traditionally been using Windows Update. So when you considered it that it's a platform change together with preferably a monthly or bi-monthly patch system. So configuring the UEFI might be something you should add to that change list as well.
Definitely, absolutely. If you have tying them in, and if you can, get those two things applied in one reset, absolutely for a win.
Mm. So what else do we get in from these toolkits? You mentioned that we're moving away from passwords because passwords are in general not good. We're using certificates, but what will the admin or IT pro experience be when they're kind of touching on the tooling, the Surface IT Toolkit?
Yeah, let's bring up a little picture and we can take a look. So I guess those folks who have been in and around Surface for a little while would probably appreciate and be aware of, before April of this year, we had a good load of different IT tools. They were all individual downloads and they were all kind of bespoke tools. So we made a concerted effort to kind of make life simpler for a lot of our commercial customers and our IT pros, and package this up into a new platform using under the Surface IT Toolkit banner. So essentially you can think of this as the single toolkit where all those tools live now, in addition to some of the new tools as well. This is a pretty sleek application, so it's obviously built on some of the new frameworks that we have within Windows, so we get the best of kind of the slickness and niceness of UWP, and we still get the access to some of the Win32 elements that we need to dive deep into Windows, and then we use the MSIX packaging architecture to keep this up to date. So a lot of our feedback that we got from our commercial customers is that they've obviously have different strategies when it comes to updating apps via the store versus updating in other mechanisms. So this particular app will remain self-updating, so you don't need to keep going back to the download center to download the latest version, or go and check to see if you've got the latest one, or use any kind of store. This will keep itself up to date, similar to, I guess, you experience what you get on Edge or Teams today.
Yeah, because what I find interesting with that, I kind of prepared a little bit for this talk, and the MSIX it's many hundred megabytes, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So, but when you download the MSIX file, it doesn't appear that. So it only bootstraps the download of the Surface IT Toolkit.
That's correct. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's a new way of delivering the toolkit. So it's always been pushed from the latest bits from online, but it's very, very sleek, the file that you download from the Surface Toolkit side, and it's really a nice way of seeing how that the application is being always updated with the device as it lives through the ecosystem. So yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Based on the screenshot you see there, we see a few toolkits, and you mentioned this is a platform where Microsoft have embedded all the different Surface for IT tools into one applications. Um, is there any one particular that you really feel that people are talking and using the most?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the customers. I say like there's definitely some strong contenders. I would say probably one of the most popular ones is the data eraser, and then followed by our recovery tool. So maybe I can talk a little bit about those two as a good point. So if we take a look at the data eraser functionality, so we have obviously the ability within Windows or Intune to do a reset or wipe of the device, and for most users, it's sufficient. They don't need anything further. But there's many of our regulated industry customers that require a deeper level of data sanitization, if you will, of the device. When I guess they're recycling the device or they're retiring it, or perhaps they're even just redeploying it to another user and they're from one classification to the next. So these, given the data types that are on these devices and the nature of their regulated industry, they look to NIST, which is one of the kind of central bodies around how to do different standards of technology. So what the data eraser affords is a deeper level of wipe that complies with the special publication you can see on the screen there today. So many organizations will be looking for tools like this to be able to perform those wipes before they go and retire or remove that device from the organization. So what the toolkit will do for you is build you a USB key that you'll be able to use to go and boot from and perform that wipe on that device, meaning that you'll be able to say, yes, the device is NIST compliant in terms of the wipe that I've performed on it from that standpoint. So that's all well and good, but I guess one of the advantages that we've been able to one of the things we've been able to take advantage of with this new toolkit is being able to build on some of our customer feedback. So for a long time, many of our customers were saying, yeah, this is great. We love that we're NIST compliant wipe, but what we'd really like is to be able to generate a certificate of sanitization, and even the recommendation by NIST is that you really ideally need to be able to kind of close that loop, which is yes, you've done the wipe, and yes, you've also got the proof to show that you did perform that wipe. So that's one of the examples that we have of now a new feature in the toolkit that wasn't available before, of being able to create a certificate of sanitization.
Yes, because the previous version of this eraser tool, you created a stick and it kind of just nuked the device, so everything
Yes.
went black, but there was
Yeah.
no proof of execution. But if I'm not mistaken, you might have a demo prepared. You have a surface to wipe.
I do. Let's take a
Oh,
look at that, and I can share you to see what that looks like. So, um, yeah, as you can see, the navigation menus on the left, and that's how you're kind of navigating from each tool from one to the other. And then, as I mentioned, we've got the ability to be able to build the key first, and then once you've done that and you've performed that wipe, what happens next is that obviously the wipe takes place, but we also write a very kind of small log file to that USB key. And then that serves as kind of the basis of some of the fundamentals of the wipe and what happened, what standard we use, what time it occurred, etc. So once you've done that wipe, you can you plug in that USB stick, and then you can go to this flow of creating a certificate, and then you'll go and import those log files. Now, that you can be afforded, if you want to do one at a time, you can do one at a time. We also have the ability to do multiple devices at once, so it'll keep saving individual log files. We also do a verification check as well, so we know if the log file's been tampered with, and if there's been any changes, then you won't be able to use that log file to create a certificate. And when it comes to the actual certificate and what NIST asks for, there's really kind of two buckets. There's the stuff that we know as, I guess, the people that make the product, and then there's simply things that we don't know, which is the things like who performed the wipe and what's their position and what's their title and location, etc. So we have this flow of having the operator fill out these various fields within the tool to then be able to then apply that to the certificate. With this one, you can kind of see what's the required fields here, which is kind of the bare minimum. But in addition to that, you'll also see we've got an add custom field button there too. Certainly, having worked in the commercial space for many, many years now, commercial customers love to be able to customize their experience. So if there's custom fields that folks want to add, then they'll be able to then simply add more custom fields to that as well. So perhaps they want to, also capture, the title might be department and the field value might be HR. So they can continue to add custom fields that would then also be applied to the certificate from there.
Reason of destruction of disk. So why did the device have to be recycled or repurposed? So yeah.
Exactly. So we give that flexibility from them there, and then you can kind of get it. You get a bit of a summary there of what's going to be on the certificate, and then you'll choose a location as to where you kind of want to save these files or these certificates. And then we'll go ahead and then we put those two pieces of information together, and then we go and build our certificate file. And then you'll have your certificate that will be ready to then, I guess, be stored in a way that your organization sees fit. And then you can also, obviously this is a PDF that you're looking at right now. And then a part of the process of NIST is also officially signing off. So they getting a signature from the operator who actually performed the wipe, and then getting a signature from the supervisor as well. But as you can see on the certificate there, we've got all the pieces. So everything that we know about the device, from the model to the disk, the type of wipe that was used, the time it took place. So all these things that we know that we've captured within that log file are then appearing on the certificate there, alongside of the information that I guess the end user put in there as well.
A question that kind of popped into my mind, and I've never thought of this before because the certificate part is brand new. But will there be generated a separate log file if someone wipes the disk of the same device twice? Will there be two different set of certificates because of the timestamps, or will the first version be replaced by the newer version?
Yeah, so because of the timestamps and the differences there, we would have two separate log files that would be there. So again, there's definitely things that can happen within that wiping process. So it's always good to kind of have an audit history of, perhaps sometimes they fail, or perhaps it's a different type of wipe that takes place because of a configuration. So we would have two separate log files to create certificates accordingly from those ones.
Now that we have replaceable SSDs, in the case that you have a Surface device with a cracked screen and you have two Surface devices, you could remove the SSD from the broken device, move it into a working device, and kind of wipe the device or disk securely from the working Surface, and then kind of move it way back. So it's all going to be documented everywhere. So that's kind of a cool feature. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I know there's definitely more stricter customers out there than others. So even in those repair scenarios, I know that some customers simply can't even just send a device back, even if we as Microsoft do our own disk sanitization when these devices come back. But customers are bound by their regulations to be able to perform these themselves. And I guess the value add here for many of our customers that there's obviously no charge. Yeah. So you would, often pay, for licensing for other utilities to kind of do a similar thing. But this is all part of what you get when you buy a Surface.
Yeah, it's labor hours. So no additional software applications, but the hour cost of Rohan and Alex will be there. But everything else is free of charge. But I got to say, I demoed this tool as the first version. I think it's 2015 or 2016, and this stands out as one of the few tools that I feel that people should know about, because this really gives value when it comes to a security it doesn't matter if you're going to repurpose, replace, or remove a device from your organization. Either way, this securely erases everything on your device. And how many seconds does it take?
Yes, that is definitely one of the other advantages is that it is very, very quick. So obviously when you look at some of the other like resets and data wiping either through Windows or Intune, we're wiping and then we're rebuilding. So there's a whole kind of extra process and that rebuilding takes, some time. Whereas this, because of the nuclear approach, it's very quick. It only takes a couple of seconds, and then all the data is gone. So it's if speed is paramount for users, then this is definitely the fastest way to do it.
Besides the recovery tool, we've seen how the certificate is being run, but is there anything you need to keep in mind when you boot the device from a USB? So obviously, the first step you need to do is that if you use DFCI, so the configuration and disabled boot from USB, you need to kind of re-enable the USB to boot.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Obviously, if you've applied anything that's going to prevent you from booting to an alternative operating system, essentially what all we're really doing here is we're booting to a WinPE image. So it's still a Windows image that we're using under the hood. But yeah, if you've used SEM or DFCI to completely disable secure boot and those types of things, sorry, not secure boot, but disable alternative boot, then yeah, you would have to go and change those policies before you're able to do that.
We've seen the certificate part here. Is there anything we shouldn't be aware of when it comes to create these tools? Is that kind of a time-consuming process to do that, or is it kind of just like what you did now? Click a button and have a USB ready.
Yeah, absolutely. It's relatively quick to kind of do all that. I think the kind of the most probably cumbersome area is entering the details, but we do optimize for that as much as we can. So if you created a USB stick and you had a stack of 10 devices to go and get rid of, so you need to do the wipe, you'd perform the wipe. We'd have 10 log files on there. We can stick that one USB key in the side to then generate the certificates as I just showed you, but we could do multiple at once. And then we can apply the same details across those multiple certificates. So I don't need to type in my name 10 different times to generate the certificates. We can have a common field that will just go through all of them. So there's definitely some optimizations that we've made as much as we can to I guess make this process as fast as it can. Because typically what we see is, yeah, it's not usually the ones or the twosies. It's usually, people are doing these in stacks of, fives, tens, 15s, etc.
When you configure this tool for the first time, the Surface tool for IT, you get prompted with a question like, what kind of devices will you be using? And it's quite a lineup of devices that is available there. But is it really every device that's ever been made by Microsoft that's available? Like I see there's a limitation in history that it kind of starts at a specific version.
Yeah, it does. We don't go quite far as back as the original Surface. What we really align to is what is Microsoft's driver and firmware policy. So we have 6 years of driver and firmware retention policy. So meaning that you buy a Surface, we're going to continue to ship updates to the firmware for the next 6 years on these devices. So that's what we align with the toolkit. Ultimately, obviously, as technology changes and new devices come in, the more that we support, it's great, and we love supporting our customers as much as we can. But sometimes that will inhibit some of the innovation, right? In that we can't do this feature because we've got to go and support all these devices that from a certain time. So we do start off with these. I guess if you looked across the lines, we start off with Surface Pro 7, then we look at our Laptop 3 and our Go 2 lines, and then our Surface Book 3, if you kind of consider Studio and Book in the same type of line. So they're the type of, I guess, they're the generations, which is about, a little on that, about that 7 year mark, where we start from with the toolkit. And we also looked at, some of the telemetry that we see of devices in use today. We still do have, if you've got a really old Surface device, we still do offer the old legacy data eraser tool there. So, there's no need to take that down. So that's still available for our customers as well.
So the new stuff for the newer devices, but the legacy stuff is still around there for those who have devices still being in play.
Yeah, kind of, I guess you'd be talking kind of Pro 5 and Pro 6 and that kind of generation.
Yeah. Within the Surface IT Toolkit, is there any other feature we talked about Surface Erase and the certificate part, but is there other elements in it that you feel that is getting very heavy feedback?
Yeah, definitely this one. So this is the recovery tool. This has certainly, this is a brand new, so this has never existed prior to the toolkit, and is certainly the one that we get the most passionate feedback about. As a device manufacturer, we create a very highly tuned Windows image. And then we use that image in the factory to then apply to our Surface devices. It's optimized so you get, the best experience of Surface using that image. Um, we also make those images available publicly to our customers, and they're kind of sometimes referred to as our bare metal recovery images or BMRs. Now, what that essentially does by making it public is that you can build a USB stick and then you can take the device back to factory. So say there's a situation where maybe you're troubleshooting a device and maybe you've got a highly customized environment or you've got a custom window image and you're trying to work out what the issue is. Sometimes what the easiest step to do as a step one is, okay, let's take it back to the same state that it left the factory from Microsoft and let's see if we can still reproduce the issue. And in addition to that, sometimes there's just scenarios where we're redeploying to a new user, so we want to use the OEM factory image, so we can go and build that. So today you can do that using the website, but it's kind of a cumbersome process, if I'm frank with you, which is if I wanted to go and do that today, it means that I need to go to the website, I need to log in with my MSA, I then need to go and find the serial number of the device that I want to go and reset, which is not always readily available to an IT pro. I then need to go and download that zip file. I need to unzip it. I need to copy it to a USB stick, and then I can start the reset process. So we have significantly expedited that and put it all into a black box, and we take care of all of that for you within the new recovery tool. So what might be good if I can show you a little demo to give you a sense of what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
So again, navigation menu on the left, and you've kind of got two options of create new or manage existing. So we have a whole flow of, if you've done this before and you've got these images, don't have to re-download images. You can just use your existing ones. But we'll take a look at the create new one. We've got manage devices here, so that's just kind of a UI shortcut that we put into the toolkit, allowing you to say which ones are the most important, so you don't have to use all these drop downs all the time. And then we pull through the information about the available BMR images that we have. So obviously Pro 10, very new device, we only have the one particular image. But if you look at some of our older devices, we've got different versions of Windows, different releases, etc. You then get some details about the image as well, which previously you never got from the website. It was kind of download the zip and you'll find out when you install it. And then also the ability to go and choose your language pack as well, or your region of device. So we look at the system that's being used, and then we look at the available language packs that probably apply to you and make a recommendation. But if for some reason you wanted to be using the device region to be different to what you've got that selection there. And then you kind of get a little bit of a summary, and you're prompted to make sure that you've got a USB stick connected and ensure you back up all your data, because we will wipe that obviously and format it. And then we go ahead and do the creation process. And essentially what we're kind of doing here is we're downloading that zip file based on your selection. We won't sit here and watch 11 gigs of download happen, but we do this download, we'll validate the download, we'll format that USB key, we'll put it in a place where it's ready to be booted from, and then we will copy the contents and you'll have a USB key ready to go. So obviously, we're enabling customers to skip a whole bunch of steps by not having to go through the website. It's also kind of click and forget. So obviously 11 gigs is quite a while. Computer falls to sleep and the download stops or doesn't recover properly and you've got to start again. Toolkit will keep the device awake. You can just click go and download, and then you can come back with a ready USB stick.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the not one of the sweet spots because the Windows installation WIM file is starting to grow. So you have the FAT32 or exFAT limitation versus NTFS, and everything here is already pre-split. But in order to make a bootable stick, you got to remember all the kind of quirks and squirks that makes the device boot. This does everything for you. Um,
Yes.
I did kind of do some under the hood look around in this recovery tool, and being a Surface fan, what if that's a word, I have a couple of devices, and I stumble upon that some of the devices have older versions of Windows 11. How frequently do Microsoft update the Windows build for download?
Yeah, we update it relatively regularly. We definitely have gotten faster at that. We got, if I'm to be transparent with you, we got some feedback where it's like, hey, you guys are a few halves behind in some of these. We've put extra resources and engineering efforts into essentially go and create and spit out those BMR images at a lot faster rate. Obviously, it's kind of hard to kind of classify, over the entire portfolio and generation how often our images are created, but certainly for our newer devices, we're looking at kind of every 3 to 6 months where we would be updating based on the Windows releases for these images. So we're definitely getting faster and bringing them to customers so they can keep up to date a little bit better.
And I also stumble upon something fun. If you choose some of the devices that is being shipped with a potential of smaller disks. You can choose between the Windows 10 or Windows 11, which is kind of the obvious one that is supported for the device. But you can also choose a Windows 10 and Windows 11 compact version for those that's being shipped with less than 64 gigs of storage. Uh, would you happen to know what's the major difference between the compact and the non-compact versions of the Windows?
Yeah, I couldn't give you the specifics today in terms of I guess if we were to kind of go through file lists, but ultimately, yeah, at a very high level, these are a a very specific stripped out version of Windows that's designed for small disks. We're not unique in that space. Obviously, there's other OEMs that have similarly sized disks in some of their devices. So that's what those images are. So essentially, taking out the extra things where we it's going to reduce the install size of Windows. So in terms of user impact, my understanding at least is that from an end user standpoint, you're not going to notice a difference between a compact version and a non-compact version. So I guess you don't need to worry about, oh, am I really getting everything that I need here in this compact version? This is less around end user facing, but more around how Windows behaves and installs features.
Final question about the Surface tool. You make your own UEFI, and you have all this configuration. Is there any chance that I can run this on other devices made by Microsoft? Because I see you have an Xbox behind you. I think there's a Microsoft headset as well, but I every now and then I stumble upon people and they think that, oh, I see you have a Microsoft sweatshirt, which happened to be true every now and then. Uh, my son plays the Xbox, and I don't want him to do that after hours. And can we put child lock on that, or could we disable the Blu-ray player, or could we disable the USB on the Xbox? So, is this available for any other, or is this a Surface specific tool?
Yes, no, I'd love to be able to do similar things and disable things on my on my Xbox for my children as well. But no, this is just for Surface devices. So I get similar questions as well. Yeah, even from my kids around, do you talk to the Minecraft people? And I'm like, no, they work in the green square. That's a different team. I work in the blue square, so, in Windows and devices. So no, this is just for Surface.
All right. Is there any way of hacking this one to work onto other OEMs, or is this because we do all the you guys do all the magic stuff with the UEFI yourself?
Yeah, so this is very, I guess, surface specific. When we look at the UEFI, I mean, the kind of the most universal platform is definitely DFCI. So there's definitely other OEMs that could leverage that platform. Surface Enterprise Management Mode, which we saw earlier with the configurator, is very specific to Surface in that implementation. So not something that's available with other OEMs. And similarly, I guess with all these tools, obviously there's probably some underlying technology that's very similar in that fact, but from a supportability standpoint, we're going to make sure that this works great on Surface devices, and that we want to focus our testing and our supportability on Surface, and where we can make an impact.
Any final words to our listeners or viewers?
Yeah, well, I guess, thank you for your passion in Surface. I've been in this business many years now, and I've seen passions across so many different communities, and that's definitely one of the things that I love, is just seeing how passionate people can get about our devices and what we build and how they use them as well. It's always super interesting to talk to folks and see how they're using them. So, keep your feedback and your stories coming by way of different contacts like Alexander into us, because we're always listening. So, yeah. Thank you, and thanks for your time, Alexander.
Yeah, sure. So if you have any feedback either to our podcast or if you have a feedback that might interest Rohan and it features port this application to the Xbox maybe, if you have any questions or feedbacks regarding the Surface tool for IT, please leave a comment or note and we'll make sure that we pass that along. You have a good one.